Today, many people, right, when I say to you the word O.J. Simpson, many of you will immediately have a very strong opinion, and it perhaps won't be about the fact that he was an iconic NFL player. It perhaps won't be about the fact that he was a movie star to many people, or the fact that he was a brand ambassador for places like Hertz. No, of course, it'll be the fact that he was accused of murdering his ex-wife and her friend, something that he very passionately denied. Many people absolutely do not agree, though, that he was innocent. I can tell you that now. Kelvin MacKenzie, I mean, you are a man, you've spent your whole career telling stories. If someone's fresh to this, they've just switched on the telly, they were not one of those 95 million people that watched this car chase, they were not one of the 150 million people that watched the trial. Give a very potted history, just an overview of this story about O.J. Simpson.
OK, so it's about 30 years ago, and this was in Brentwood, which is a reasonably fashionable suburb of Los Angeles, and it's at night, and a man with a knife stabs to death, as it turns out to be O.J. Simpson's ex-wife and her friend, a guy called Goldman, I think. And then what happened was, the reason that everybody knows about it is because for the first time ever, the networks all broke into whatever they were showing, whether it's soaps or anything else, and showed a chase of the police trying to catch O.J., because he took it on his toes, and well, here it is now. Yeah, here you go. So this is the car chase, actually. So as Kelvin was just saying, Nicole Brown-Smith was the ex-wife, Ron Goldman was the friend. He was actually a waiter in a restaurant. I think he was apparently returning something back to Nicole when this incident happened. And when we say these two people were stabbed, I mean, Nicole, Aaron, she was stabbed in the head, in the neck. She was almost decapitated. Anyway, O.J. Simpson, he was then supposed to be turning himself in. Instead, he was basically, they couldn't find him. He then ended up in this absolutely bizarre car chase. We're watching this now. This is a Ford Bronco. It was apparently being driven by one of his teammates, who then later went on to say that apparently O.J. Simpson had a gun to his own head, O.J. Simpson's head, during this whole time. 95 million people apparently watched this car chase unfold. The car chase plus the standoff at the end lasted for about 90 minutes in total. This was such a spectacle. I want to put you in context, in case in case you're not really familiar with this. This would be like someone akin to like a David Beckham, this level of kind of stardom, if not perhaps beyond. People were lining the streets of this route. They were kind of cheering. They used to call him Juice, like O.J., obviously. They used to call him Juice. They're free Juice. It was a huge, huge spectacle, all of this. As I've just been mentioning then, of course, it was then went to the trial. You'll be perhaps familiar with many of the things that happened in that trial. It was absolutely dogged by accusations of racism. Many people were saying that people in the police were racist, that they'd planted evidence or tampered with evidence. Much of it then came down, ladies and gents, to a glove. Do you remember that? This glove, what they were then saying is that they found this glove, this bloodied glove, and if O.J. Simpson could get it on, here we go, look, I've got the footage of said glove. If he could get it on, then, you know, that might show us one thing, but if he couldn't get it on, if it didn't fit, it was if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. Look at him there, pulling that glove on. And I have to say, I don't even think O.J. took to the stand after that, because that apparently convinced the members of the jury to such a point that that is seen by many, Aaron, as the moment that he apparently came across as being innocent. Do you think he was?
Well, I don't know beyond all reasonable doubt. I mean, at the time, it was a bit of a standing joke that he'd sort of quote-unquote gotten away with it. And there was a broader context of the Rodney King riots around the same time, slightly earlier in LA. And there probably was a concern with regards to public disorder and the politics surrounding it. But I don't think his case was overwhelming. I do remember, I was very young when this was, of course, being broadcast. I do remember overwhelming shock in response. But particularly for me, in a UK context, why this stands out as memorable is that it really marked a singular moment. You used the word spectacle. I think that's absolutely right. People began to engage with television in a quite different new way. We saw that as well with Lady Diana's passing a few years afterwards, maybe a year or two after that as well. So there was a shift going on there. Transatlantic, with television being this new medium, quintessential medium by how we make sense and understand the world.
It is really, really odd. I must confess.
However, it must be said that even the way America divided was the white community thought he was guilty of sin, and the black community didn't. However, when it went to a civil court, when one of the family then sued him, the civil jury found that he had done it and awarded $33 million.
It did to the families.
And they've hardly had a penny of it, to be honest. The guy was a criminal. I mean, after all...
Do you think he was innocent?
No, I think it was... America was going through a strange period at that time. First of all, there was huge kind of racial tension. That jury was mainly black, right? And there was a lot of played on that issue, right? But that tension, it was the same kind of idea that cleared Michael Jackson. You know, there was a sense that if you were famous, you didn't do things, right? That would be different today in America. Today in America, he's had 30, as far as I'm concerned, he's had 30 years, and he should have died of his cancer in jail. But, you know, he ended up getting 17 years for armed robbery later on. So this was not some innocent guy, you know. This was a killer and a criminal. And it is, but here we are. We're now 6,000 miles away from Los Angeles, and yet this is leading the news. So it's a big story of his death as well as his life.
One of my viewers, Julie, she's got in touch and said, Michelle, I was actually in Las Vegas due to fly to LA the very next day when the verdict came in, and we was warned that if O.J. Simpson was found guilty of the murders, our flight would perhaps have to be cancelled because it was unquestionable, the sentiment that there would be race rioting in LA and it wouldn't be appropriate or safe to fly in. That's an interesting point. And I do think as well, O.J. Simpson, I think at that time there was quite like a black activism movement going on, but I don't actually think O.J. Simpson kind of aligned himself to that. So before all this stuff, obviously, he was like a huge brand ambassador for places like Hares, but he was always quite reluctant to get involved with that kind of like the black activism that many other people were so passionate about at that time.
Well, he certainly wasn't Tupac. But the protests and the riots you're talking about, well, like I said, the Rodney King riots in the early 1990s in LA. And that was actually a case of the police doing something very bad. They beat him, they lied. Fortunately, it was all caught on camera. And so I think, like I said, that was the context. The police had been very naughty. There was clear evidence of institutional racism within the LAPD in the aftermath too. And you have to remember with the LA riots after Rodney King, it wasn't white on black. It was South Korean, it was Hispanic, it was a complete mess in downtown LA. And I think there, of course, would have been a real concern of something similar happening after this.
As well, I've got to say then, so we talked a bit then about what happened with his life, but of course he has passed away. He did die, actually, of prostate cancer. It was only a few months ago that he actually went onto Twitter, basically, to tell his fans or whoever that he was actually healthy. Listen.
My health is good. I mean, obviously, I'm dealing with some issues, but hey, I think I'm just about over it, and I'll be back on that golf course, hopefully in a couple of weeks. But it was very nice hearing from you and hearing those good, positive words. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, prostate cancer, I mean, this is something that's touched my family. Everyone knows now, I think, that my partner had prostate cancer, and I just had quite big surgery for that. Of course, we've had the King. He's had issues with his prostate. The prostate cancer can be quite a concern to a huge number of men. I think it's something like 1 in 8 men get prostate cancer, Kelvin.
Yeah, not good. So keep away from caffeine in your coffee, and keep away from alcohol.
Alcohol and caffeine, why is that said to increase the risk, is it?
Yeah, it does, yeah. In fact, that's the first thing you should do.
It's a very good job I don't have a prostate then, the amount of caffeine and alcohol I drink, I can tell you that.
All right, well, I think it actually affects more men, though, doesn't it?
Well, I should hope so. I should hope so, yeah. I was just about to make some hilarious comment, but I'll stop myself.
Yeah.
Aaron, this whole kind of prostate cancer, you know, it is becoming such a... Maybe because my partner's had it, I kind of pick up on it now absolutely everywhere. I seem to feel that there's so much of it about. I don't know if there is more of it about, or if it's just me being more in tune with it. But it's a very important topic, and men really do need to be making sure that they're focusing on their health properly.
There are actually trials for, and I know it's a very unsavoury word for some people now after COVID, vaccine trials for certain kinds of cancer. I think there's a set of trials.
Get out.
There's a certain set of trials for lung cancer. And if those are successful, you know, in the 2030s, billions of people could benefit from that. Of course, that raises a bunch of questions, side effects. And also, by the way, if we do, quote-unquote, beat cancer, which is very plausible in the next 10 to 15... It's plausible, I'm not saying likely, plausible. In the next 10 to 15 years, you actually create a bigger problem down the line, which is more and more people will live longer and they'll die of dementia instead, which is incredibly hard and expensive to treat. But, I mean, that's something... We talk about lots of bad stories, like you said at the top of the show. Let's talk about something good for a moment, which is, you know, we have a
huge amount to be grateful for. As I've just said, it's just touched my family. And it is when you hear that you or a loved one has got that diagnosis of cancer, it stops you in your tracks. It's absolutely terrifying. And I know many of you perhaps have had your own journeys or challenges or even have lost loved ones. And that's why we're all, of course, so grateful for anyone, actually, and everybody that's involved, whether it's the cancer, you know, the prostate awareness and all the rest of it. They do fabulous jobs, don't they, to try and raise awareness and support anyone that's got that sad diagnosis. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on that O.J. Simpson story.